Good afternoon. My name is Beth Stuebe, and I'm the Director of Publications and Press for ILTA. Today, I sit down with Richard Punt. Richard is at Thomson Reuters, and he is the Managing Director, Legal Strategy and Market Development. We're talking today about ILTA ON, why they're there, who they are, and how Thomson can help you guys. Welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
I'm really excited to have this conversation for a couple reasons. One, everyone thinks they know TR, but they don't. Can you walk me through a little bit of what you guys are up to right now?
So TR is, as you know, a business that's been in legal for a long time. So, everybody has a view on us because they've all had an experience and we have a broad range of capabilities. And some of those continue to be incredibly important to our future. But we also recognize that this is an industry that's in transition. And in some ways, TR is participating in exactly the same kind of transition. We recognize that technology is just playing so much more of a role in this industry than it ever has. And it will play so much more of a role in TR's business. And so for people who have experience and familiarity of Thomson Reuters about being about great research and content, those continue to be absolutely the anchor assets around which our business has been built. But we are hugely focused on extending that footprint more broadly into technology and being there to help the legal industry get to the next stage of development, which technology offers one of the opportunities for doing that. And so, TR continues to really be focused on the opportunity in legal, not just with law firms, but also with corporations and increasingly with government and the courts. And you'll see us try and reach out from that base of research much more extensively into technology opportunity.
Talk a little bit about economies of scale. TR is everywhere. You're in London, they're US based, across the world. How are you helping the basic legal technologist from the smallest, individual-sized firm to the largest corporation?
So it's a great question because Thomson Reuters has a track record, I would say, of being a comparatively closed, focused on proprietary solutions type organization. That's how we've been seen in the past, and that would be a fair reflection. We've been very focused on developing what we think are great products. But what we've recognized is that what our scale offers to the industry right now is reach, and critically a mechanism through which we can extend technology adoption. The biggest challenge at the moment around technology in legal is not about ideas. There are some brilliant innovations. The challenge is distribution, and there's so much fragmentation that lawyers are faced with this kind of smorgasbord of opportunity, and that means they choose to use less than they would otherwise. And so we are, absolutely pivoting to being an organization that's much more open, that's intending to be much more collaborative, and one that is there to leverage that reach. Of course, we think there's economic opportunity in it for us, but we absolutely see a role we need to be playing for the industry here to give that reach of distribution to customers, to smaller technology providers who've got great ideas, but often lack the market presence that we can bring to them.
And I think that market presence is going to be a huge concern for the next few years. The pandemic has caused a lot of disruption in this marketplace. How has the changeover to more work remote situations been for TR?
So like for all organizations, it's been an experience I think none of us expected to go through. I think it's been maybe surprising, but in a very positive way, that we and many of our customers have managed that transition pretty effectively, and the investments that everybody's made in technology over the last few years have really paid off. And the ability for workforces to shift to working from home very rapidly has been one that lots of people have achieved pretty rapidly. I think it's a point where you just have to give huge credit to the way in our case Thomson Reuters people have responded to that challenge. And I think it's amazing what has been achieved. The question I think is, how is that playing out for our customers and how are we responding to that? And in the near term, the reality is it's about getting the businesses up and running. A lot of it's been things like Zoom, things like Teams, just getting those collaborative platforms in place. But as one of the big firm's CIOs said to me, the barriers have come down. What we've seen over the last few weeks is the inherent inertia and resistance towards technology from, let's face it, the partners in many of these firms has receded dramatically. And that's not just necessity, I think many partners have for the first time recognized the opportunity that these technologies provide, not just for them to be able to continue to do the work, but actually to do it more dramatically, more effectively. And I think that's great, but I think we're still in the first wave here, because what people are starting to get to grips with here is what the longer term implications of some degree of remote working are going to be. And those implications are profound for the way in which law firms work. And we are just starting to work through those issues with our clients as they get to grips with, what that will mean for them.
I think we're also having to pivot internally. ILTA ON overtook ILTA CON. We've been on site for almost 40 years as different iterations of ILTA. Why are you guys joining us at ILTA ON? What do you think will be a difference for you in the way you communicate with your constituency?
So, in some ways, the whole question of how a conference such as this works on a remote basis is, it's one that we are fascinated by, both in terms of how we reach our own customers, but we have an events business ourselves, so we're going through the same experiences. And, it's interesting because in some ways, you have the opportunity actually to create a more intimate relationship with the people who are engaged. Because if you're really engaged in this way on screen, then people are listening and people are focused. And I know one of the challenges in running conferences is you get people to turn up, but just how much of their time and effort do you get? And so I think, our opportunity, we think, this is about us getting our message across. Certainly that's part of what we're here to do, but it's also about being in the flow. This is a time where you can't do enough learning of what's going on in the marketplace. People are working out, making decisions, thinking through the implications of what's gone on in the last few months every day, in a way which in a quote unquote regular year you just don't get. So this is way more about listening than talking for us. We want to make sure that we're in that flow and we understand what's going on, and we can start to respond to the needs as customers are facing them.
What do you think will be your biggest innovation challenge in the coming year?
So I think the big question here for law firms in particular is going to be how they grapple with the end of the office as we know it. Because whilst I'm sure there will be a return to some level of office working, there are lots of drivers now that will encourage there to be a much higher degree of virtual and remote working than there's ever been. And what I think law firms are starting to grapple with is that has huge implications for the way in which they onboard, train, develop, supervise their people, how they build culture. And those are questions which, have never really involved technology in the past, because the office has created the environment in which all of those things happen in the physical environment. And I think the biggest innovation challenge, and maybe the biggest innovation opportunity for an organization like TR, is how we can enable those absolutely critical skills, critical tasks, to be leverageable through technology rather than through the physical environment. And one of the things I'm going to talk about next week is how that will really need and drive the codification of the way law is practiced in order to enable this to happen on a virtual basis. I think that's a huge issue that law firms are just starting to grapple with. And, of course, it's less obvious in the first few months of this kind of situation because they're working with a bunch of people they've known for a long time that are well established within their firm. But as they start to bring new people in, then that is where this issue will surface, and it's going to be a very significant one. And I think that's one of the big drivers of innovation and challenge going forward in the industry.
I think legal technology is at a precipice point. We are going to have to figure out how best to leverage what we've seen and have used for decades even with what could come. Richard, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to see you and TR on site, well, in a virtual way.
Thank you.